Hello and welcome to the ARK of E Podcast. My name is Noah, and I am here once again with a very special guest. I brought it back. I brought it back to special guests because it's been a while.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a little time.
So there you go. Yeah, it's Sunshine Mayfield once again. You saw it in the episode description. Say hello.
Oh, hello.
Thank you. Apologies up front. We've been a little lacking on the podcast front as we adjust to life in the midst of a pandemic. You've still been working regularly, as has Gavin. I want to point that out to people. So that's part of why Gavin and I have not been able to get on mic recently. He's still working pretty much a regular schedule, but he's the only guy on staff. So he's taking, he's got a lot to do. He's a busy man.
He's a busy guy.
Yeah. But we are back finally, and I will tease this. Hopefully this will be a beacon out to these guys. But Mr. Tim Niles, the often referenced but never actually heard Tim Niles, just recently set up his own little in-house studio. So we should be hearing from him soon. We'll talk about what we've been watching in quarantine, etc. And the also often mentioned and never heard Mr. Barham Williams should be joining me on the cast soon. So you're going to be hearing some new voices since Gavin's tied up at the moment. But Mayfield was kind enough to get on the phone with me. And what are we going to talk about today?
We are going to talk about directors and the top three, our top five movies, but their third entry in life, because we're wrapping up our third year.
We
at
are,
the ARK of
yes.
E.
May 1st will be our 3-year anniversary and the kickoff of year 4 here at the ARK of E. So yeah, this is kind of a look back and maybe a look forward. We'll be like, hey, these directors, the third one was great, but look what they went on to do. So
see, and for me, I did a lot of the third one is arguably their best.
Yes, in some cases that's definitely what I went with. In some cases, it's like an interesting pick in the context of their entire filmography. So, but anyways, yeah. So we're doing third outings, and I'm sure there may be some vagaries with like TV movies as your opener, or maybe
I didn't
things that
count
were never
any
properly
TV
released.
Movies, yep.
Yeah, I tried to steer away from those. I have some honorable mentions that are kind of questionable, but yeah. So that's the idea. Before we kick things off, any particular quarantine rewatches or new stuff you've been going through? Anything you've been binging that you want to shout out to people?
Yeah, watching a lot of The West Wing currently, because I've never gone through it, and you know me.
So
I'm
this is not a
guy.
rewatch. This is a first time through.
Correct. I made it through the first 2 seasons at some point in life, and then never finished all of them. So I'm working my way through West Wing.
And those are old school primetime TV dramas, so we're talking like 22, 24 episode seasons, correct?
That's right, yeah.
Gotcha.
So, and I got about halfway through season 4, and there's 7 total seasons. And I'm a Sorkin guy, so it's been great. Speaking of Sorkin, just also watched Molly's Game for the first time, his directorial debut. I feel less good about that.
Okay. Yeah, I still have not taken. I haven't rolled the dice with Molly's Game.
Ooh, that would make sense.
Do you see what I did there?
It's an exclusively poker movie, though. So,
maybe you can answer me this. So Michael Cera's in it, right?
He is.
And isn't he basically playing Tobey Maguire though?
That's true. That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Does he at all try to affect a Tobey Maguire-esque persona?
No, I think it's Michael Cera, but a toned down Michael Cera. And he's in it in the front half. He plays Player X, based off the book Molly's Game by Molly Bloom, the Olympian who went on to run a series of poker nights, but then got in trouble with the Russian mob and the federal government, and so he plays Player X. And Player X, based off books and based off of people's assumptions on personalities and the way that she writes about Player X, it has been hinted at that the most accurate theory is likely that is Tobey Maguire.
Gotcha.
So that is kind of that's kind of the
so
gist.
Take that as you will. Okay.
Yeah,
I've been doing just a ton of rewatches. I'm gonna save most of those for whatever chats I have with Tim and Barham in the future. But one like kind of recent rediscovery, not rediscovery. I meant to see it last year and I didn't get to it. It's called Sword of Trust. I don't know if you're aware of this one. It's from Miss Lynn Shelton. She gave us one of the greatest mumblecore movies of all time, Hump Day, with Mark Duplass. I don't know if you remember that one.
Oh, I
She
do.
also
I
did
do.
Your Sister's Sister, also with Duplass.
Which is that's a deep cut that is really solid.
Yeah. No, I enjoy all of her movies, so I wanted to get to it, but it slipped past me. It's on Showtime right now, I believe. Stars Mark Maron, who most people will be familiar with from his podcast work more than anything else, but he did have a show on IFC, and he's been branching more and more into acting. He was in the highest grossing movie of last year. Or no, it wasn't the highest grossing, but it was up there. He was in Joker for like 2 seconds. I guess people know him from that. But anyways, Maron's in it.
John Bass.
Yes, help me.
Michaela Watkins.
Michaela Watkins, but then from Workaholics,
Jillian Bell.
Jillian Bell, thank you. So those are your 4 main actors, and it concerns a pawn shop where they are presented with a sword that may or may not prove that the South actually won the Civil War. That's kind of the kickoff to the plot, but it's a great, like, small slice of life comedy where nothing is overplayed in it, but I found it hilarious throughout. Just a great exercise in tone, and I really, really dug it. I like all of her movies, and I would highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it, that's Sword of Trust, and like I said, you can find it on Showtime right now. One thing I will mention on the TV front, and then we will kick off this top 5. I just finished Devs last night.
I haven't started it still, but I need to. And I say that every day, and I need to. But I'm also watching a lot of Survivor, so that's fun.
Okay, yeah. Maybe you could take a break from Survivor and spend the 8 hours
crushing
with Devs.
it. In like 3 weeks, I'm on season 10 of Survivor.
Jesus. Okay.
It's all on Hulu, man. Though the internet is a magnificent and terrifying place, but...
Devs is also on Hulu through FX, exclusively on Hulu. I cannot recommend it highly enough, and I can't say anything more about it until you've seen it. So go watch it so we can do an episode on it. I would love to chat now that it's all over.
Because we're certainly not going to do an episode on Westworld.
No, we will not be discussing Westworld. In the positive, unless there's a huge comeback in these last 3 episodes. But I have been thoroughly underwhelmed and unimpressed by season 3, which I was incredibly hyped for. So, but luckily there's been a lot of other good TV. Plot Against America is about to wrap up. Better Call Saul is having like its best season ever so far. It's incredible as usual. There's good stuff out there, and we got some stuff coming up I'm excited about as well. Did you watch Run, by the way? Premiered last week.
No, I did not.
That is
on
the
HBO.
new HBO show starring Mr. Domhnall Gleeson. And,
love him.
Oh my gosh, Merritt Weaver. Excuse me. Who's also excellent, and it is notably co-written by Miss Phoebe Waller-Bridge.
Love that too.
Fleabag fame. So those names in and of themselves should be enough to make you want to check it out. But it's the new half-hour, I guess, comedy. I haven't watched it, so I'm assuming there's some comedic elements, but it's also got maybe more of a heightened like action thriller aspect to it. I have no idea what to expect. But they're 1 episode deep so far. Also, What We Do in the Shadows, one of my favorite shows of last year. Season 2 just started. They dropped 2 episodes the first night. Those are available on FX, of course, which means they're also available on Hulu. So, yeah, good stuff going on right now on the TV.
What a time. What a time to be alive.
Yeah, yes, truly, what a time to be alive. And anything else we want to get to before we jump into the top 5? Let's remind people, if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, if you can go give us a 5-star rating, that would be awesome, because it would really help us become legit reviewers for Rotten Tomatoes in the future. That's something we're working towards. We've mentioned it on other casts. Some people have taken us up on it. I have seen the numbers slowly ticking up, but we still got a long ways to go. So if you are listening, even if you're listening on a different app, Spotify is awesome. We're on there now. Maybe you're listening to us there. If you have an iPhone, you have the Apple Podcast app. They threw it on there. So just hop over there, search us. Yeah. Give us a 5-star. Take all of 30 seconds.
Get your significant other to give us a 5-star. Get your mother to give us a 5-star.
Anybody that you're currently in quarantine with. Anybody that
all
you're
have them go
with,
give it a little 5-star.
Yeah, let's just chainmail it, and then we'll hit that 200 really quick. Okay. So shall we? As always, as is tradition, you're the guest. I'm gonna let you either kick it off or defer to me. It's up to you.
I'm gonna kick it off.
Do it.
And I'm going to kick it off with Mr. Lens Flare himself.
Okay.
I'm going to go J.J. Abrams. His number 3 movie being Super 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you of the opinion this is the best of the Abrams filmography?
As I look through it, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think without a doubt. I've never seen Mission
I
Impossible 3.
really want to disagree with you, like, immediately. But tell me what you love about Super 8.
Mission Impossible 3.
You've never seen it, okay?
No.
Well,
Is that your
should
one?
Be the giant,
is that your
the giant caveat at the front of your list? I think it's between MI3, which is sad to say because it's his opener, but it's a hell of a debut. Of course, he had done tons of TV beforehand, but
yeah, Lost, Felicity, Alias.
MI3 is a comeback for that franchise. Totally revitalized it, got us excited for like what has been. It's now kind of regained its traction as one of the best current action franchises. And one of the most profitable as well. But I love that first Star Trek, man. And I'm not a Star Trek guy at all.
Yeah,
but that movie
like
got me excited about that franchise in a way I had never been before.
But man, Elle Fanning, Kyle Chandler, I think it's charming as hell. I just really enjoy it. I think it's just kind of like it is like quintessential like blockbuster movie watching.
It's what we were sold on him as he's the next Spielberg, and it was the most Spielbergian thing he had done up to that point, and pretty much remains the most Spielbergian thing.
Yeah, so I'm a huge fan of it.
And don't get me wrong,
movie.
I really like that movie. I haven't rewatched it as much as the other two I just mentioned, and then we don't have to talk about Star Trek Into Darkness.
Yeah, that was
which I'm sure he would prefer just to kind of forget about. It seems like he was kind of on autopilot, if you will, while making that one. So,
and I would just since Super 8, everything he's done I think has been fine to bad, right? Like Force Awakens is fine.
Fair to say.
Star Trek Into Darkness is not great, and I didn't love Rise of Skywalker. Just for several reasons, but I'm gonna get personal with it. Didn't like what he did to my boy Rian Johnson.
Yeah, that's pretty much where you and I stand on it. You can make all of those same decisions, and I would have a lot less of a problem with it if it wasn't so openly antagonistic towards the previous filmmaker. It just feels like a giant middle finger.
I'm backing my boy Ryan.
Though, I cannot wait until Rise of Skywalker is on Disney Plus because I do look forward to rewatching it again. Now, having kind of settled on it and like, okay, I did not enjoy that, maybe I can be a little more forgiving the next time around.
I think my argument is, and I know that what I'm about to say is very highly contested. I think The Last Jedi is the best Star Wars movie. I know Empire Strikes Back is definitely up there for sure. But when it comes to just a general, like, does it look good? Does everything have its place? Is it just well designed? And are the details just in every crevice? It's phenomenal. It is truly a film. Like, it is the most deep Star Wars movie, I think.
For sure.
And so it just hurts that much more when you go watch The Rise of Skywalker to be like, oh, remember when we had The Last Jedi?
Yeah. And I guess I kind of while we're talking about Super 8, I guess I kind of look forward to him stepping back from big franchise IP
and doing more things like Super 8.
And doing something where it's like, okay, clearly you're drawing on your influences and movies of this ilk, but you're still doing something original at the same time, even if it is very much like homage and very heavily influenced by those things. Correct. But yeah, Super 8, predates the kind of Stranger Thingsification of pop culture, which came like several years after it, actually. But it was, in some ways, that kind of kickoff to the 80s throwback summer blockbusters.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's nice because when you really are Mission Impossible, Star Trek, and Star Wars, outside of Super 8, that's really all he's done.
He's only worked in big franchise IP. I also would be interested to see him all of a sudden scale down like a ton, almost in a Rian Johnson-esque fashion, post Last Jedi, even though Knives Out has a huge cast and a substantial budget and everything. It's definitely
just blew
not
up,
a Star
right?
Wars movie.
People loved it at the beginning, but it's only grown in its popularity.
Absolutely. So I
people love
think
that movie.
if Abrams maybe dialed it back and did something a little more close to the vest like that, he could maybe get some cred back with me personally, because Rise of Skywalker certainly wasn't doing it. Anyways, okay.
Rian Johnson not on my list because I think his third movie is his worst one. But other than that,
I agree with you there, but we've had the conversation about Looper. I mean, if that's the worst movie in your resume,
you're doing pretty good.
You're doing pretty solid.
Because it's not bad by any means, but it is. I would argue it's
all.
his worst movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you got?
My number 5. I'm gonna kind of try and play a game with you. I don't know if it'll work out. I'm gonna give
Let's play a game.
I'm gonna give you the first 2 and see if you can tell me what the third one is. So we're going back a ways.
You know how embarrassing this is gonna be if I don't get it.
I mean, not in all cases, and some of them are pretty easy. But okay, this gentleman, no longer with us, gave us Fear and Desire in 1953, followed by Killer's Kiss in 1955, and his third film from 1956 is... It's all good. It's The Killing.
Hold on.
I gave it to you. I'm sorry. Or did you
Killing.
not hear me? Yes.
Stanley Kubrick.
It is. Yes. Directed by Mr. Stanley Kubrick. Co-written by Mr. Jim Thompson, one of the greatest writers of Pulp Fiction ever. Go read The Killer Inside Me and The Getaway if you haven't. Those are fantastic. Those would be good quarantine reads right now. Stars Mr. Sterling Hayden in the lead role. Joe Turkel, who I only mentioned because Kubrick didn't reuse a ton of people all the time, but Turkel is here in 56, and then he's all the way as Lloyd, your friendly bartender, in The Shining in 1980. And I think he maybe is in Barry Lyndon as well, if I'm not mistaken.
The Killing is one where people don't think of it, right? Like, people don't go to The Killing, and I think it's kind of what we were talking about earlier, right? Like, it's not necessarily the best Kubrick movie.
No, and I the reason I bring this one up is contextually in his filmography, you would think he's going to have a very different trajectory based on these first 3 movies. And notably, his next movie is Paths of Glory, which kind of cements him in a different echelon of filmmakers in that era. He gets brought on to Spartacus shortly after, and then he really starts doing his own thing. You got Lolita, Strangelove, etc.
Dude, but The Killing is so good.
Yes, fantastic movie. It basically concerns a racetrack robbery and all of the different components and how it goes down. It kind of pioneers the shifting narrative and different timelines going on. You've got the timestamps, which reoccur or are referenced, lovingly homaged, in another third feature, which I left off the list because it would have been my number 1, Jackie Brown from Mr. Quentin Tarantino. The entire way that robbery plays out in the third act of Jackie Brown is very Killing influenced. Also, I guess people are familiar with some of the iconography now because of Bad Times at the El Royale, which also has a key reference to it with the Jeff Bridges character.
Mm-hmm. But man, The Killing is nice because it's a quick watch.
Yes.
But you still get that noir feel and grit to it that normally you have to spend like 2 hours with. I feel like. But this one, it's quick and it goes and it's good. It's good.
Very brisk runtime, very modern, like a very easy movie to recommend to people where it's like the pace is, you're not going to butt up against it too much. It still has some very 50s qualities of like, it's very moment to moment, and you're seeing a lot of small details that maybe you would, to keep the pace moving in a modern movie, you would gloss over some of that stuff. But it all plays out perfectly, and it leads to still one of the greatest endings in the history of cinema. If you've never seen it, obviously we don't want to ruin it here. So, The Killing, total classic. Again, you if you looked at this individually, I don't think you could necessarily make the leap to like, this is the guy who's going to make 2001: A Space Odyssey. This is the guy who's going to make, Clockwork Orange. But you do see that he's bringing a lot of flair and individuality to an established genre, but it has the feel of like there's a real director at play here. This is not a by the number. Like, you could take this same story and put it into a workaday director's hands, and you get a very different product that we're not even bothering to talk about now. But it holds up. Great movie. That's The Killing from 1956. That's my number 5.
Well done.
Yeah, you're number 4.
All right. You should be able to get this one pretty easy. All right.
Alrighty.
First film, Clerks.
Okay.
Second film, Mallrats. Third film, do you know who it is,
film,
Noah?
I'm going to take a wild guess. And I'm also going to say, shamefully, this is one that did not pop in my head, but probably should definitely be in my personal top 5. It's Chasing Amy from Mr. Kevin Smith.
It is, man. In prime Kevin Smith era, this is the final entry into the Jersey trilogy, and it's so
which
good.
Of course continues to expand into the View Askew-universe, if you will.
Yeah.
But, yes.
So good. But to be fair, haven't watched it in probably a couple years, and so I'm curious how my lens has changed on that specific movie.
I think it.
But it typically holds up pretty well.
I watch it at least once a year. It's one of those for me. So I have seen it within the last 12 months, and you do have those thoughts when you're watching any things that could be considered somewhat problematic. And at the time, there was some controversy around the idea of, a straight white male essentially seducing or brainwashing, even though that's not the context of the movie at all, but a lesbian into a relationship and how convincing or realistic that was. I think it holds up as not being particularly problematic. Again, most of what could be controversial stuff is all put in the mouth of the Jason Lee character, Banky,
who's meant to be a shithead.
And exactly, and so you kind of it gets kind of a get out of jail free card, if you will, because all of the dumb stuff that you would expect somebody to say about the situation is all put in the mouth of that character, who eventually comes to a realization of his own. So, yeah, great movie. Still, I would say still totally holds up, and yeah, arguably. That's one of the best third features because he could have gone either way after Mallrats. Huge success out of the gate with Clerks. Makes Mallrats total bomb. Doesn't make its money back. Big attempt at a studio comedy, essentially. That's still very much his, but and people love to this day, and I do as well. But to come back with Chasing Amy, which is inarguably his most personal movie, it feels like. And that's the one that kind of broke him through. And a lot of people still cling on to is you can't ever completely write off Kevin Smith because he did give us that at one point. And it still stands as one of the more honest, raw, and emotional relationship movies there is that I can think of. So, yeah, I still stand by that one. And it probably should be on my list as well.
Yeah, my number 4.
Yes. My number 4 comes from 2009. Okay. And this guy, he's only worked a little bit. His first movie was in 1999. It's called Being John Malkovich. Second movie was in 2002 adaptation. And then he took a while off and came back with Where the Wild Things Are. Mr. Spike Jones. Yes. Of course, it's an adaptation of the beloved children's classic from Mr. Maurice Sendak. Max Records was the lead little kid. Features the voice talents of Miss Catherine O'Hara, Forrest Whitaker, James Gandolfini, Paul Dano, Lauren Ambrose, Chris Cooper, etc. Goes down as probably having still the greatest teaser trailer of all time, I would argue.
And one of the best needle drops.
Yes, 100%. Fantastic soundtrack from Miss Karen O of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs. Of course, that iconic drop of Arcade Fire, which was a lot of people's first exposure to them, I feel like, even though they've been around for a bit. And still stands as a very niche movie that you and I have talked about recently because I feel like we just don't get a lot of these in general. But a little movie called Wendy came out earlier this year.
Oh, so good. So good.
One of, if not my favorite movies of the year so far. And there just aren't a lot of quote-unquote kids movies for the kind of 8 to 12-year-old range where you're a little bit older, the emotions are getting a little more complex, you're not quite a teenager yet, you can handle some scary stuff, some bigger themes, but you're also maybe wanting a movie that doesn't pander to you or doesn't, look down at you or play things safe. And Where the Wild Things Are is, I imagine for a young kid, because I experienced this when I saw it in the theater, a little overwhelming, because there were definitely walkouts of parents that brought their very, very small children to this movie who were terrified by the giant furry monsters running around everywhere.
It's kind of the point. That happens in the book.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I think for a very particular type of kid, this would just speak to you so strongly if you saw it at the right age. But for me, who's, anything kid-centric or nostalgic, and of course I loved the book when I was growing up, and I love Spike Jonze, so when you told me this was happening and then you swirl together the arcade fire of it all in that trailer, I remember literally getting misty-eyed when the Warner Brothers logo came up before the movie, because it was one of those where I was just like, I'm finally seeing this. I've been waiting for this since the trailer dropped. Oh my God. And then it completely delivered. Another one that I watch pretty much once a year, again, mainly because there's just not enough movies like this. Now Wendy will be in that rotation as well. But when you need something that it's just
Speaks
it's got
to the inner
scare
child.
factor, it has moments of just sheer joy in it, and there's so few movies that manage to capture that. And it's got some true magic to it with the effects and the way he brought everything together. I don't know if it's my favorite Spike Jonze. I'd still probably go Malkovich or maybe her.
Yeah.
But it's an incredible movie, and again, I wish give me some more stuff of this ilk. I know there's some Roald Dahl adaptations in the works right now. Give me some.
I haven't found a Roald Dahl adaptation that I've loved. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think there still has yet to be a really truly good one done. I don't count Willy Wonka in the same way because the movie is kind of its own thing at this point. I mean, that's the best, inarguably, and maybe The Witches with
Matilda.
just sheer terror. Oh, I do love Matilda. What are we talking about here? There's some good ones. The recent ones have not been good. But I know they're doing a new version of The Witches, which could be exciting. We'll see.
That was a creepy movie to me as well. Angelica Houston.
Very creepy movie, yeah. So that's my number 4, Where the Wild Things Are. And then, of course, I mentioned it by name, but he takes a long time off before he comes back with her. Pretty much equivalent to the same break between adaptation and Wild Things. But yeah, I make more movies, Spike Jonze. Can you do that?
He's just
please?
busy making music videos.
Yeah, some of the best music videos ever. Also, just because I feel like I didn't shout it out properly.
Just a workhorse, man.
One of the most underrated James Gandolfini performances. Gets completely overlooked because it's voice only, of course. But what a departure from that guy. Great stuff. Okay. Your number 3, sir.
All right, number 3. This is the first movie. This is going to be a little controversial because I don't know if people consider this the first movie. But the first movie is Nights and Weekends back in 2008.
Okay.
The second movie is Lady Bird in 2017.
Okay.
And then number 3, Little Women.
So
Greta Gerwig.
what is the controversy over Nights and Weekends? Because I was under the impression that Lady Bird was her debut.
I think she co-directed Nights and Weekends with Joe Swanberg.
We can put an asterisk next to this one because I've got some asterisks on my.
Because people will say that Lady Bird was her directorial debut, but I guess it was that was the first one she directed by herself. She's listed as a director on Nights and Weekends.
Yes. Okay.
And I'll take what I can get if it means that I get to shout out some Little Women.
Absolutely, for sure.
That movie was
admittedly, I wanted to throw in Portrait of a Lady on Fire,
beautiful.
and wasn't able to because it's her 4th movie.
Yeah. No, God, Little Women. And you recently
Women.
Watched it and were just like, just completely overwhelmed with how good it was.
Missed it in the theater at the end of the year, and I honestly had just been waiting for it to drop off of the. I didn't want to flat out. I mean, in retrospect, I should have just thrown down the $20 and bought it outright as soon as it was available, because I will definitely rewatch that movie several more times. But I was just waiting to rent it, just because trying to conserve money in this current pandemic. I'm currently unemployed, by the way. So yeah, I held off, but I wish I hadn't waited as long, so you and I could have been talking about this for a while. What an amazing movie.
It's so
just
good.
Top to bottom. Yeah.
Florence Pugh, Eliza Scanlon, Laura Dern, Timothy Chalamet. Ugh. And, I guess Meryl Streep's in it too.
And Saoirse Ronan, and you got to at least mention Emily Watson, right?
Hey, Emma Watson's in it, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And so
Emma, excuse me, I always do this to them. Emma Watson.
But it's incredibly heartfelt. It is got to be one of the best adaptations of those style of books. And she puts her own little flavor into it, but it is incredibly watchable, and it does not drag a second of that 2 hour and 15-minute run time. I think it's it was probably my number 2 of last year, but it's ultimately just amazing.
Yes, retroactively definitely would have been in my top 5 for last year. I thought it was a flat out 10 out of 10. Having like little to no familiarity with the source material, and only kind of knowing vaguely what I had read in some reviews and some podcast conversations about the nature of her adaptation and the kind of shifting the timelines around a bit, bringing in elements of... I did look into this a little bit more since you and I last talked. So Little Women is specifically the kind of earlier narrative with them as younger girls.
Yes.
And then all of the stuff with them aged up 7 years is from a completely separate novel, correct?
Sure.
It's essentially the sequel to Little Women with them aged up, but that's not covered in the original story from what I understand. So she merges those two together and then also brings in elements of Louisa May Alcott's actual life and getting the book published, and she kind of brings that into the Jo character.
Correct.
But even if you're not aware of all of like just the like, holy shit, that's super creative and like that's what you need to do at this point, because how many times have these stories been adapted, and like how are you going to bring something fresh and new to it? And like you said, it feels like it has a life to it and a buoyancy. It never really slows down. The dialogue is universally fantastic. Performances are great across the board. And again, a story that I had that you would have been repelled by in high school if you told me like, you've got to read Little Women, just on the basis of like what little cultural knowledge I had about it. And
a
then
book
to sit
about
there and
women.
Exactly. But to sit there and be completely enthralled by it the whole time. Also,
leave your toxic masculinity at the door, Noah.
Yes, and I've told you I've still yet to see Call Me by Your Name, but there's a part of me that wants to, just with the current state of Chalamet and him being cast in everything, or wants to be like, I don't know if this guy's always cracked up to be. He's pretty incredible. And I know we're only a few performances deep so far into his career, and I haven't seen everything, but
Dune.
Even as I wanted to actively like, critique every decision he made in this movie, I was just like, this kid's a fucking hell of an actor, dude. So
God damn it, he's really good.
Yeah, I'm looking forward more and more to Dune. We just got a giant slew of images released online.
Yeah,
it's looking good.
It's a massive cast. Well, for a movie that is considered like fine to bad, right? Like typically most people don't have positive feelings on Dune.
It's the least well-regarded Lynch movie. It definitely still has a cult following. I will stand by. I mean, it's totally worth watching. It is a great watch and entertaining movie. But yeah, it's an acquired taste for sure. I'm sure tries some people's patience, and mainly that's fans of the book are not fans of the movie. Very little crossover across there. So we'll see. But yeah, no, I'm incredibly surprised after Blade Runner 2049, where they really bet big on Villeneuve and like really bet big on like, there's going to be an audience for this. People are going to be dying for the Blade Runner sequel 20 years later.
It was so good.
Or 30 years later, excuse me.
I would argue that 2049 is better than Blade Runner.
I would not disagree with you there at all. But at the same time,
I don't know if that's blasphemy.
Not a lot of people saw it.
Struck by lightning.
I think that's becoming a more and more popular opinion. I think maybe initially people were like, you can't write it off. But I've always been of the opinion that like Blade Runner is like 60% an incredible like revolutionary movie, and then 40% that's just like, nah, we could re-edit this, or like
you gotta like
smooth out the story.
So you got the initial theatrical release, and then you got the director's cut, and then you got the final cut, and then like and it's bits and pieces of everything. If you were to like make a fourth cut, maybe you could piece together like I think the initial director's cut is considered the
the definitive
the
version, or the best
version,
if you will.
Because that Final Cut's garbage. But yeah, it's just when it's shrouded in all of that.
I'm still so shocked that they gave 2049 the budget they did.
But it's so good. It is so
good.
And
I agree with you. But bottom line, not a lot of people saw it. So I thought it was even weirder to go like, okay, I'm gonna take what for most people is an even more obscure sci-fi property, even though it has legions of fans of the novel. Okay. But I'm going to take something that's arguably more obscure in the film realm. I'm going to put even more money into it. And the plan is to make 3 of these. It feels like a huge gamble. And I love Villeneuve, but I think he's kind of weirdly has the like Nolan level of carte blanche, but not with the payoff so far. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, he does not have the bankroll that is matched.
Exactly. Yeah. So very interested to see how it all plays out, but it is at the moment. I mean, it is the biggest movie of the year in terms of just scale.
Well, that's not hard
budget,
because
etc. But I don't know who is actually going to show up for this thing if it actually comes out at Christmas. So
I'm just saying that's what I'm saying is like if no other movies come out this year, we're getting all the technical awards are going to Bad Boys 3.
Yep. So. And Best Picture goes to Trolls World Tour. We already talked about this.
Wendy. It will go to Wendy.
Yeah, it should anyways. And I'll mention it on other casts, but never, rarely, sometimes, always. That would be my other, that's neck and neck with Wendy for Best Picture of the year so far. How did we get there? How did we get
Chalamet. From Little Women to Chalamet.
That is right. Yeah, hey, Little Women, good movie. And I guess technically her third feature. Yes.
So yeah, that's my number 3.
I'll let it slide.
Thank you.
Okay. My number 3. This gentleman, maybe I'll mislead you a little bit, but probably not at all, directed a little movie called Blood Simple in 1984, directed a movie called Raising Arizona in 1987, and in 1990, Mr. Joel Cohen made...
Barton Fink.
Miller's Crossing. You're very close.
Dang it.
You're very close. Barton Fink is right
after
Both blind
spots on the...
Some blind spots you need to correct, sir. That's all I'll say.
Fair enough. I like the Coen brothers, but yeah, I missed... All right. Okay.
Now, granted, Raising Arizona is right before this. Raising Arizona is in my top 3 Coen brothers movies. Miller's Crossing is fantastic and grows on me more and more every time I rewatch it. It's a Prohibition era mob war movie. Got Albert Finney as kind of one of the main mob bosses. Gabriel Byrne is his lieutenant, who may or may not be double-crossing him and having an affair with his girl. It's Marcia Gay Harden. Her brother is mixed up in this as well, played by John Turturro in an unforgettable performance that has been referenced many, many times. John Polito is also in here, probably his best work with the Coens. It's great. It's kind of still oddly kind of a lost 90s gangster movie to a lot of people who I feel like just skipped over it. And this one, in the context of their filmography, it to me is kind of where they start to establish we're just our own thing. Like, you can't really pin us down to a genre. Blood Simple is a kind of down and dirty, ground level, small crime caper. Raising Arizona is a wild madcap comedy, and then Miller's Crossing is a period piece and a gangster movie, something you could normally wrap your head around, but it just has like a different flavor to it because that's them. And then they go right into Barton Fink, which is one of the most like unclassifiable movies ever. They have a little bit of a dip with Hudsucker Proxy, and then it's pretty much gold across the board from there on, except for The Lady Killers. But yeah,
I did not like Hail Caesar.
I recommend rewatching Hail Caesar. Gets better. Fair enough. Okay. But yeah, so you said you haven't seen it. I highly recommend it. It's got some fantastic dialogue. John Polito kind of steals the show, but it's good stuff. It's got some iconic sequences in there that you will definitely recognize, having been referenced from other things. So, yeah, Miller's Crossing. I don't know if it's readily available anywhere, but go seek it out.
All right. That's your number 3.
I don't really have more of a sell on it other than that.
Just go watch it.
It's a great movie.
Nice little movie. All right. My number 2. All right, so 2008, a little movie called Hunger comes out. 2011, a little movie called Shame comes out.
Yes, sir.
And then 2013, Steve McQueen hits us with
12 Years a Slave.
12 Years a Slave.
I got to be honest with you, because we can bring this up. It was an off-mic conversation. Originally, you and I were kicking around solo movies starring predominantly one actor. And so because I had that on the brain and I had thought of Hunger with Fassbender, I was like, McQueen, yep, third movie, definitely the strongest of the filmography. But I would be lying if I said 12 Years a Slave was anywhere near a favorites list of mine.
You're not rewatching this movie on a regular basis.
Considering that it's a Blu-ray that I own and have never watched. Because we talked about this. I felt compelled to buy the Blu-ray and support the movie, but I never wanted to see it again after theaters. Like, no desire to.
Yeah, but if you haven't, it's an important movie to watch.
100%. Yeah.
And weirdly enough, the watchability from Steve McQueen movies isn't always like, they're not fun. You know what I mean? Like, you're putting yourself in they tell phenomenal stories, but you're similar to Ari Aster isn't a fun watch. You're putting yourself into some uncomfortable situations, but I think sometimes that's important, and sometimes those are just feelings you got to be able to rumble with, and I think that 12 Years a Slave is no different. And I think it's arguably his best movie. Phenomenal cast from top to bottom, and one that I think because people don't go back and rewatch it, you kind of forget. It's found its way out of the zeitgeist at this point.
Yes, it came through, won Best Picture, won several Academy Awards, and nobody talks about it anymore. And I know there has been kind of long-term a little bit of a backlash to the idea that, again, that was a movie that was incredibly well regarded by the Academy and a lot of awards outlets, but it's also a movie that is predominantly about African Americans as slaves, and the argument of just like, why does it always have to be a slave narrative for us to get like recognition? Why can't it be for anything? So I think that's kind of unfortunately the lasting legacy of that one at the moment. That's really the only time I ever hear it brought up is in the negative. But at the time, I mean, one of the most powerful theatrical experiences I've ever had. Just a tough sit, top to bottom, but like as you said, an important one. And most importantly, it gave us Lupita Nyong'o.
That's what I was about to say.
Just what a revelation from the second she steps on screen, and she's continued to have an amazing career. So,
yeah, that's my number.
And
2.
I also want to give credit to Fassbender, who at that point was starting to break a little more mainstream, and definitely could have basically started taking on Tom Cruise 90s era roles if he wanted to, but instead continued to kind of push himself here and there. Now, at the same time, Fassbender's somebody who, when I started thinking about Hunger, I was like, what happened there? Like, he's kind of, what happened to Fassbender, man?
The Alien movies, Prometheus and Covenant.
Which, again, Prometheus, I remember thinking, like, oh, he's incredible in this. And he is the best part of what was the most recent one? Covenant? Yeah, he's the best part of it, like, inarguably. But, I don't know.
So, he was in The Snowman, right? That bombed.
Yes. A movie that I did start because it was on a How Did This Get Made? And I was like, oh, God, this is, like, fun bad? Maybe I should check it out. And literally, like 15 minutes in, I was like, this is borderline incomprehensible. Like, this is poorly edited. Just, what a mess.
He took a little bit of a break, I think, because when you look at his, he did the Assassin's Creed movie.
Also a bomb.
Bombed. X-Men Apocalypse is considered one of the worst ones. This is all after he did Macbeth and Steve Jobs back in 2015.
And Jobs kind of seems like the last... it kind of seems like the last Oscar play, if you will.
Frank was a fun little watch back in 2014.
It's a solid little indie movie.
But then you get, Assassin's Creed, Alien Covenant, The Snowman, X-Men Dark Phoenix. So just he's a part of 4 bombs. And it looks like his next thing he's got is Next Skull Wins and Kung Fury 2. And then it looks like they're doing a Wild Bunch remake that he's rumored to be a part of.
Okay.
But so we're talking 2019, and before that 2017, and so maybe he's just not working as much. Maybe he's just kicking it,
Yeah.
I don't know.
We'll see.
All right, that was my number 2. Steve McQueen, 12 Years a Slave.
Yes. Solid pick. Will not be rewatching it after this podcast, but still
That's
a solid
fair.
pick.
That's a fair choice.
My number 2, this gentleman gave us Bottle Rocket in 1996, Rushmore in 1998, and in 2001, he gave us...
Ooh, don't tell me. Well, it's Wes Anderson, so we know that.
Yes.
2001 was The Royal Tenenbaums.
That is correct, sir. Arguably his most mainstream kind of crossover effort ever. This was up for like Globes, and I can't remember if Hackman got an Oscar. I don't think he got an Oscar nomination, but it was very well regarded, and kind of Rushmore, more than anything, put him on the map for like
Love Rushmore.
a certain generation. But Tenenbaums is like, I can show my mom Tenenbaums without her being familiar with like the Wes Anderson isms and the tropes and everything. That was the one I could always show somebody in isolation, and like they would pretty much enjoy it because it's got a stacked cast, a narrative that like seems semi-familiar. Like there's a lot of stories about grand families and like dysfunction, etc. But the kind of the storybook quality to it, I think, would be somewhat off-putting to some people who are like, but you don't brush up against it as much as you maybe do in some of his later work. And notably, it's kind of the end of an era. This is the last one that is co-written by frequent collaborator Owen Wilson. And the first 3 out of the gate, Bottle Rocket, Rushmore, and this, are all the 3 of them together.
Wow.
Then after this, he goes on to work with Baumbach on Life Aquatic. They do Fantastic Mr. Fox as well. And then he starts working with Roman Coppola and Jason Schwartzman. They do Darjeeling, Isle of Dogs, etc. So there, and of course Owen Wilson still is in the movies, etc. But it does feel like there's definitely a shift between Tenenbaums and Life Aquatic. I love the entire filmography of the man. I think he's fantastic. I can't wait for the French Dispatch. But Tenenbaums still...
Yeah, do we know what the deal is with that?
No word on it. They haven't pushed it yet. It's still slated for July, but obviously that's probably going to get reworked.
Now it's expected for October 16th.
He is of a particular level where I could see this one, hey, we're going to put it on streaming for $20. Because I think you got enough, like every Wes Anderson fan, they'll throw down 20 to watch the new one. Like they will. His hardcore fan base will still come out for it. I think it is one of the few movies that could potentially make exactly as much as it would have made theatrically if they give people an easy way to watch it at home. Because I mean, day one, I would be purchasing that one. I wouldn't be sitting around waiting for it to drop to $6 or whatever. So
that's
what I kind of hope they do with it. But at the same time,
never pay $20 to watch a movie once.
Fair enough. I've only done it once so far, but technically it was a gift card, so that wasn't my money. But yeah, we'll see what they do with it. I'm curious. But anyways, Tenenbaum still stands as probably my favorite. I don't know. I go back and forth. Grand Budapest is up there now.
Love
Life
me some
Aquatic's
Moonrise.
Always there. So, yeah, man. But I highly recommend it. It's a good entry point for Anderson in general if you're not familiar with his work or a fan of him in general. But yeah. And then, like I said, afterwards it goes Life Aquatic, which is arguably like the most Wes Anderson movie ever, honestly. And I feel like he kind of lost. There was a certain amount of excitement for that one because, hey, he's coming off of Tenenbaums, Bill Murray in the lead again. Like, everybody's amped for it. It gets delayed. It takes a little long, a little bit of a troubled production. And then it comes out and doesn't really do anything, and mixed reviews from critics. And then it seemed like he was very much like, okay, I'm going to continue to do me. I'm not going to try and cater to this other audience. And eventually, as kind of happened with the Coen brothers, people just kind of came around to him. He just kept doing his own thing, ostensibly. And then eventually people were just like, oh, these are masterpieces, right? Yep. Okay. So, yeah. That was my number 2, Royal Tenenbaums from 2001. So, back to you, sir.
Yeah, do we want to do honorable mentions real fast before we announce our number one?
We can definitely do that, as long as you don't step on my number one.
I'll do my best. I don't think I will.
Okay, I've got a few that are like weird cuspers. Maybe we can talk about the technicalities, if you will. A lot of when I started trying to push into older directors, because I wanted to let's try and not keep it all right here in the 90s and 2000s like I tend to do. But what you realize a lot of times is like it took them a little while to get going, or they had like 3 or 4 small movies you never heard of.
Right.
But I have, as far as in that category, The Last Picture Show from Mr. Peter Bogdanovich, which again is questionable. Targets is his first movie. His second movie he did under a pseudonym, kind of like an Alan Smithy sort of thing. So technically he doesn't take credit for it. So Last Picture Show is either his third or his second, depending on how you want to view it. It's one of the greatest movies ever made. If you've never seen it, go watch it. In that vein, The King of Marvin Gardens, the forgotten Bob Rafelson movie that comes right after Five Easy Pieces. Mm-hmm. Incredible movie. Jack Nicholson, Bruce Dern, Ellen Burstyn. Great small character study. And yeah, Five Easy Pieces is a fucking masterpiece. But King of Marvin Gardens, everybody seems to forget about. It comes out like literally the next year, I believe. And that's Bob Rafelson's third movie. Jaws is another one. Depending on how you categorize it, it could technically be Spielberg's third. And if so, it's a hell of a third movie. But
yeah,
Duel is technically a TV movie. Sugarland Express could be the first or the second. It's however you want to take it. I've got some other ones on here, but by all means, jump in.
Jason Reitman's Up in the Air was one of my honorable mentions.
Solid pick. I was just talking about that movie yesterday, actually.
Yeah, one of his best.
Oh, side note. You want to do a side note right now?
Sure.
You'll enjoy this. Guess what I watched for the first time ever 2 nights ago?
Tell me, Noah.
Pitch Perfect.
Oh, yeah. What'd you think?
It was all right.
It's fine. It's fine.
It was fun enough.
I got to tell you, if you go on to watch 2 and 3, they only get worse.
Okay, that was my thought too. I saw Reggie Watts was in the second one briefly, and I adore that man. So I was like, "All right, babe, maybe we got to." And my girlfriend does as well. So I was like, "Maybe we got to watch the second one." But we were both kind of like midway through the first one, like, I get it. Okay, but I do have to bring this up. I'm sorry. So, in the context of that movie, we're supposed to believe that Anna Kendrick, as that character, wrote the song Bulletproof?
No.
By LaRue?
No.
I know she's remixing, okay? But she clearly says at one point when she plays Bulletproof to the love interest, okay? She says, "Yeah, that's me singing." And I said, "No, it's not. That's LaRue singing." And I was like, is she trying to say this is a cover that I did of this song that I remixed, or this is an original of mine?
No, I
was
think
very
she's saying
confused.
It's a cover that she remixed, because isn't she singing Bulletproof in the shower?
Yes.
The David Guetta remix in the shower.
No, she's singing something else she's singing oh god. See, that's the other thing with this movie. Like 90% of the songs were like, yeah, I know these and I don't like them, so why would I want to hear a cappella versions of them? And I get it. The movie is like it's about pop music. I totally understand. And I do love the approach of just like, yeah, this is a world where a cappella is like the most important thing there is, and nobody's going to address the fact that is fucking ridiculous.
So I saw Pitch Perfect in theaters. And the girl I was hanging out with at the time, our choices were Pitch Perfect or Argo.
Okay.
And now I'm not mad about it because I've watched Argo and it's fine, and I'm not.
Yeah, Argo's
I hadn't
fine.
seen it, and being a Ben Affleck fan, previous works.
And you're coming off of The Town, so I was incredibly amped for that one as well.
Gone Baby Gone, and then The Town. So Argo being his third one, there's a reason Ben Affleck's not on my list, because I think it's one of his worst ones.
Yes.
But at the time, I was like, our choices are Argo or Pitch Perfect. She's like, I really want to see Pitch Perfect. And I was like, okay. And then the moment where the girl vomits off the
delight.
stage, I just looked at her and I was like, we made the wrong choice. Turns out either one would have been not a great choice. People loved Argo. I don't get it, man. I don't get why that was the one that took off for him.
I think definitely more of a crowd pleaser than the previous two movies. A little more easily digestible. Gone Baby Gone is still like such a gut punch of a movie.
Oh, but it's so good. Like, it is so good.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it was
the town
that.
is like your version. It's not The Departed, but like, it's right there in that same vein.
It's Boston Heat, except the cop character is not that interesting. And I say that being a huge John Hamm fan who is consistently disappointed when he hasn't been able to appropriately transition into movies, unfortunately.
Yeah, but he's in The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, and that's great.
And he's fun in there. I
get
love
that man in more comedies.
Here's the thing. I love that he loves doing comedy. I don't want him to do comedy.
I want to see him as his dramatic self.
I say that as like I'm a fan of the dude in general, but I need the validation that it wasn't a one-off like magic trick, that it wasn't just the perfect synergy of that character on Mad Men and that period of time, and he was just made for the role, because I know there's a great actor there. I just feel like nobody has given him the appropriate chance afterwards to do it. You could say the same thing about Cranston. Somebody who like reinvented himself on television and got a lot of film work afterwards. He's in Argo, right?
Yeah, and then Trumbull and
and he did get an Oscar nomination for that. I don't really understand why, but
but Winding Refn gave him a job. That's for sure.
Yeah,
killed it in Drive.
I mean, that's my favorite like Cranston on screen that I can think of off the top of my head. I mean, he has great bit parts all over the place, but anyways. Okay.
And then other honorable mentions.
I still have some of those too.
Yeah, Matthew Vaughn for Kick-Ass.
Is that technically what are his first two?
Layer Cake and Stardust.
I forgot about Stardust.
Which
I was
is
going
like
to say, I thought Kick-Ass was the second one.
That's probably his. Golden Circle wasn't amazing, but like Kingsman, X-Men First Class, Kick-Ass. I mean, the dude's made some stellar flicks.
Yes.
But Kick-Ass being one of his best ones, especially with the thriving comic book realm of superhero movies.
He's pretty much just give me any Mark Millar book and I'll do it. Yeah.
And then Matt Reeves for Let Me In was my last one.
Solid pick as well. Forgot about that one. Cannot wait for the Batman. We briefly talked about it here, but
yeah,
Matt Reeves has pretty much an unbroken track record for me. What do we got? We got Cloverfield. We got two Apes movies, and anything else sneak in there?
Let Me In,
of course.
War and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Cloverfield, and then he did a couple episodes of Felicity, he had like the pallbearer.
Let Me In.
Cloverfield. So the pallbearer, Cloverfield.
Pallbearer was first. Excuse me.
Yep. And then Let Me In.
And the pallbearer is like back in the 90s, right?
Yeah, 96.
And then he takes. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
With David Schwimmer and Gwyneth Paltrow.
How could we forget?
Yeah, that old chestnut.
Yeah. Okay.
If we don't talk about that,
I got a few more here. I briefly mentioned Jackie Brown, of course. My favorite Tarantino movie happens to be his third. Halloween. I'd be remiss if I didn't bring it up. That's another weird one. That's like he did. Someone's Watching Me, which is a TV movie, which was the same year, and I think chronologically actually comes out like a week or two before Halloween comes out in the theater or something. It's weird, but ostensibly it's the third Carpenter feature. Incredible, iconic. We've done many podcasts about Halloween 78. Beverly Hills Cop 2, the third feature from Mr. Tony Scott.
There you go. You like Tony more than
Tony Scott movies recently. Evil Dead 2, another weird one.
Let's quickly talk Sam Raimi getting the Doctor Strange sequel. And I literally
could not think of a better, like, I thought Scott Derrickson did a solid job with the first one. I really liked it for a character that I know nothing about.
Yeah.
But you want to talk about an upgrade. My God, I cannot think of a better person than Sam Raimi.
If there is not a talking demon goat at some point in this...
just the idea that he has basically a completely untethered imagination and budget for this movie is so exciting to me. I can't wait to see what he does with it. And I feel like this is truly going to be one of those cases where it's like, we always talk about the war of the individual working within the Marvel universe and how much individuality and director flourishes you can really bring to it. I mean,
we never got
it's inarguable.
Ant-Man.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but this is inarguable. He is the most successful and well-regarded director to step into the MCU. Think about it for a second.
For sure.
I mean, we love Taika, etc., but I'm just saying the career, the body of work, the fact that even though he's had several misses over the years, everybody loves Sam Raimi. When's the last time you heard somebody oh, that guy sucks. Oh, that guy's terrible. What an asshole. Never hear an unkind word about him. Seems like a stand-up dude. I mean, he was an advocate for comic book movies before they were what they are now. I cannot wait to see
and made some of the best
what he
ones.
does with this. Yeah. 2 of them anyways. We don't have to talk about the third one, which I don't blame him for. I don't, because by all accounts, that was just a studio, fuckfest, essentially. A giant clusterfuck of, you got to include all of these things, and we got to make sure you have this element. And he's like, well, I don't really want to do that story. And they're like, well, you need to, because we got to sell more action figures or
When's
whatever.
He coming out with another For the Love of the Game? When's the next Sam Raimi sports movie?
Or A Simple Plan? 2 great, forgotten Sam Raimi movies? Yeah.
Oh, they're definitely forgotten.
For Love of the Game, a little less so. That's a fun, problematic one that has a lot of issues, but I love it nonetheless. But Simple Plan is an incredible thriller. It's like a Coen Brothers movie on acid, essentially.
I can't believe his last theatrical release was Oz the Great and Powerful, which I didn't hate.
Which I did not see.
I didn't hate it. But yeah, when you have Spider-Man 3, Drag Me to Hell, Oz the Great and Powerful, and Drag Me to Hell is unimpeachable, dude. You can't convince me otherwise.
Yeah, I still wish we just got one of those from him every couple years, but it is what it is. But anyways, I say there's an asterisk next to this one because technically Evil Dead is not his debut. He does have a feature from 1977, which is feature length, never properly released. So count it if you want to. If not, Evil Dead is the original crime wave, which is written by the Coen brothers, which I still have never been able to track down. That would technically be his second feature, and then we can say Evil Dead 2, which is one of the greatest horror sequels of all time, and unequivocally one of the 3 best horror comedies ever. Yeah. Real quick.
Can I go back to work now?
I went with kind of a new one. To keep it high fidelity centric. John Wick Chapter 3, Parabellum. It's the 3rd film for Mr. Chad Stahelski. The first 2 are the first 2 John Wicks. And dude's doing pretty good so far.
Hey, he's 3 for 3 in my book.
100, absolutely, dude. And the last one I had on here, another weird, if you start in the 60s or 70s, things get complicated. Mean Streets from Scorsese. He's got 2 feature-length documentaries that predate this as well, along with Who's That Knocking at My Door and Boxcar Bertha. So, depending on how you count it, but if you want to look at it as his 3rd movie where he establishes, this is a particular track of my career that I will always return to, the kind of grounded gangster movie, and this is the birthplace of it, it's worth mentioning. But again, technically, it's not really his 3rd movie. Okay, that's all I had for honorable mentions. Any more you wanted to throw out there?
No, those are all the honorable mentions I have.
Okay, well, I am extremely happy about my number 1, so you give me yours.
Yeah, I feel good about it. Now, this is one where you can tell me that I'm wrong.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with Hot Fuzz from Edgar Wright.
I can't.
And you're going to say, hey...
How are you going to argue it?
You're going to say Fistful of Dollars might be his first movie. And I'll go, all right, cool, I'll concede that. Fuck you. Scott Pilgrim versus the World, then. And either way, I will be correct.
That's all I was gonna suggest. And the only reason that I left Scott Pilgrim off the list is because I was hoping that it was gonna be your number one.
Oh, it's right there. Yeah, either one.
Let's just say it's Scott Pilgrim.
Hot Fuzz and Scott Pilgrim versus the World double feature. The dude. That's my number one. I'm
sorry if you misspoke. Is it Fistful of Dynamite?
It's Fistful of Dollars. Or Fistful
just
of Fingers.
Straight up Fistful.
Fistful of
Fingers. Fingers. Okay. I was gonna say Fistful of Dollars is definitely
parody of a Fistful of Dollars.
Right.
But it got a release, but like not in a way that's meaningful.
In like one theater in England on his street or something.
So most people consider Shaun of the Dead to be his first film. Fine. Mm-hmm. That would give Scott Pilgrim versus the World his third film, which I love that movie.
Well, and I think if we do go with the conceit that is the third, it's him stepping out of what you thought was going to be his groove essentially, and like his crew, if you will, and going American, so to speak, even though it's kind of Canadian. A lot of Canadians in the cast. It is set in Canada, of course, as well. But such a departure from the previous ones, but still 100% like nobody else could have made that movie. You can see the progression from Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz to that movie. And at the same time, like, I kind of wish we had gotten 3 or 4 more exactly like it. But
yeah, I love
this
that
kind of happens with things that are way ahead of their time.
And I got to tell you, if for whatever reason, and this is going to sound incredibly insensitive, and I don't mean it to at all, but if I do not get to see Last Night in Soho this year because of all this,
that's the true tragedy.
Yeah. I will find that virus and I will kill it. I will spend years going to school, just out of the pure hate that I had to wait longer than that. Yes, clearly that is not a real tragedy, and clearly that is not what is most important at this time being. Yes. But I would still love to see this movie this year, 100%. And will be very bummed if I have to wait longer.
It's up there. Gavin and I did our most anticipated list, and I can't remember if I put it on because it has no trailer yet. I think I may have bumped it down a little bit, but I think it was still in my top 5.
Yeah, it's considered post-production, but it does not have a release date that I can see. But yes, Scott Pilgrim versus the World,
I'll save this.
We don't need to talk about it more. It's just it's great. Yeah, it's great.
I was gonna say I'll save this, and I won't shout it out in detail here. But because this is very Gavin-centric, of course. But for anybody who's curious about Chuck Hank and the San Diego Twins, the latest Coat Wolf Productions movie, I do actually have new information because they've started updating their Patreon again in the midst of quarantine.
Ooh.
And there is some movement on that movie. We'll discuss what we know on a future episode. But anyways, that just occurred to me. Tease that for people. Okay, my number one.
Your number one. Go ahead, my man.
This gentleman made a little movie called Say Anything in 1989. He followed it up with a movie called Singles from the early 90s. I forget if it's 91 or 92. And then he gives us this movie in 1996. What is it?
Well, you're talking about Cameron Crowe.
Yes, I am.
And there's the reason that I did not pick this movie.
Why? Dear God, why?
Because Jerry Maguire, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, I didn't want that. That wasn't my number one.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it's not on there. Because I think Almost Famous is his peak.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He goes on to make my favorite movie of all time. But in the context of his career...
That was very anticlimactic. I just took all the air out of your balloon, so I apologize for that.
No, you're totally fine. I thought you were going to tell me, like, I hate Jerry Maguire, and I was going to be like, well, I don't think we can record podcasts together anymore.
But I would argue that Almost Famous and Vanilla Sky, I like those better. So that was the reason I did not pick Cameron Crowe.
Fair enough. Let me advocate if I can for Jerry
Though
Maguire.
I love We Bought a Zoo, and...
Underrated movie, man. People like to make fun of the title. It's not bad.
But then he goes up and follows it up with Aloha.
I don't want to talk about Aloha.
Neither does anyone associated with that movie.
Oh, man. You ought to talk about just having your dreams. Like, I'm a guy I'm always rooting for I always am just like, this is going to be the one, man. He's going to get the magic back. And that is the epitome of like, the magic is gone. The magic is gone. It's just somebody flailing to recapture what they once had and failing at every turn. It is a parody of a Cameron Crowe movie. It is, it's rough.
A bunch of white people hanging out in Hawaii.
Yep. It sure is. And again, you tell me that cast, I thought we had a gold mine on our hands. Didn't happen. Whatever. No. Okay. Getting back to this, though, Say Anything, he comes out of the gate strong as a writer-director. Of course, he wrote Fast Times at Ridgemont High. He had a little bit of awareness, but Say Anything really put him on the map. Singles is like a nostalgia movie for some people, but it's not particularly great. It has a few memorable moments, and even at the time, it did okay. All right? But Jerry Maguire's a multiple Oscar nominee. It's a huge hit. It's a crowd pleaser. It's an R-rated crowd pleaser, which I feel like just doesn't exist anymore. And movies of this ilk really don't exist anymore. Just the kind of like, it's not even quite a dramedy. I mean, there is drama, but it's very, very funny. It's got one of the all-time movie star performances from Cruise, like one of his 5 best. Most people's introduction to Renee Zellweger, who's incredible. The best Cuba's ever been. He won an Oscar for it, deservedly so. And I don't know,
what is it, Man of Honor?
Cookie? That one? With him and De Niro? Yeah.
Yeah. He's got to go piece together. They try to make sure he can't join the Navy, and he says no.
Never saw
He's going to be a diver, man.
I did watch him box in Pearl Harbor, though. I did watch that. But yes, okay, so he goes on to Almost Famous, which is unequivocally my favorite, and I would say even more rewatchable. But Jerry Maguire, in recent years for me, I watch this movie like 2 or 3 times a year. And it is a total cable movie as well, where if it is on TNT or TBS and I come across it, it's going to stay on for the next 2 to 3 hours because it takes forever for them to show this movie because it's over 2 hours long and there's a lot of ads. But it's incredibly rewatchable. You can pick it up at pretty much any point. The dialogue's fantastic throughout. Great, like, genuine chemistry between all of the performers. And I literally never get tired of watching it. I think this run in particular of Maguire, Almost Famous, and Vanilla Sky is incredible. Now, people don't like Vanilla Sky, and I totally understand that as well. But at the very least, the 1-2 punch of Jerry Maguire and Almost Famous, even though they come 5 years apart, you'd be lucky if you had a career that had 2 movies of that caliber, that close together. So he's one of my favorite filmmakers still, even though he has pretty much disappeared off the face of the planet, except for a few documentaries here and there and the occasional failed attempt at a TV show. I'm still rooting for you, bud. But if you're done and you want to hang it up, you still gave me my favorite movie ever and a couple other good ones as well. So
don't forget that Jerry Maguire gives you Jonathan Lipnicki.
Still, my girlfriend had never seen the movie before. She's not a huge fan of kids in general, or like kid performances. She doesn't like
people under the age of 12. Really finds them
she's
obnoxious.
Got a real bias against anybody below 4 foot. But
if you can't ride a roller coaster, she's got no time for you.
I say exactly. I say all of this to say she was completely enamored and entranced by Jonathan Lipnicki. She was immediately just like, his head and his body, it doesn't make sense. That's the cutest thing I've ever seen, like, in my entire life. And that's before he even opens up his mouth. Little
Vampire.
Like, yes. Yeah, iconic child performance. Probably the most charming Cruise has ever been. And just, I love it, man. It's a great rewatchable movie. And again, it is rated R, but it's one of those that I'm like, it's kind of for everybody. It's got a little bit for everybody in there. Not really a family movie necessarily.
No.
But like once you're over the age of 13, I think you're good with this one, and you'll probably be watching it, from that point forward. Yeah, Jerry Maguire. It's my number 1 junior effort, 3rd film, whatever the hell we're going to call this episode. I think we're going to call it Third Time's the Charm. The director edition. I don't know.
Yeah, that's great. That's what a clever title. Go with that. Run with that.
I can't tell. Is that sarcasm?
No, that's no. I think sometimes I'm genuinely like nice and people don't expect it, and
right.
and they think I'm kidding, and I'm like, no, I'm very genuine. I think that's a great title.
Thank you. Well, you'll see what it is when you're listening to this episode. Thanks, man. You got anything else you want to chat about?
Oh man, no. I just need to go watch some stuff. I need to catch up on devs.
100%. That would be my number one recommendation right now as far as TV for anybody. If you're not a fan of sci-fi, it's probably going to be a really tough sell. If you're not a fan of like grounded, thought-provoking, like deep thinking sci-fi, probably not for you. But I don't know if I've seen a better show so far this year. So
I will say, if you're looking for some music to end this episode with, I've been digging,
by all means, yes, because we didn't really do a transition. So
I've been digging Sammy Ray and Friends.
Okay.
And I was supposed to go see them at the end of this month. Of course, that was postponed.
Before the world was
but she
put
just
on
came out
pause.
with a new single called "Whatever We Feel," and it's a ditty. It's a ditty.
All right. Well, we'll roll out with that for sure. Thank you once again to Mr. Sunshine Mayfield for joining us. And I guess if you guys have any particular like top 5 suggestions, we've just been kicking around a bunch of random ones. We were kind of trying to steer away from like stuff that's gonna just remind you of coronavirus the whole time. Not everything has to be centered around that. A lot of people are probably looking for an escape. So if you want more of that, let us know. If you want us to do some more quarantine themed episodes than we've already done, let us know. thearkofe@gmail.com. You can shout at us on Instagram at the ARK of E Network, on Twitter at the ARK of E. Sunshine will chat with you there. I'll be over on Instagram. And if you want to go talk to Gavin on the Facebook, you can attempt to, but I don't know if he's doing anything with it. And you can just search the ARK of E Network there. Okay, so definitely let us know if you have any ideas for future episodes. I will be back here soon with somebody or maybe a solo review. I'm not sure. And I'm sure we'll be hearing from Mr. Mayfield very soon. Excuse me, before we go, you guys are coming up on the end of season 2 of a little show, correct?
Yeah, Bending Not Breaking, our Avatar The Last Airbender podcast is about to wrap season 2. And we've already started recording season 3. And so that should hopefully be out sometime this summer. But yeah, so go like us on BNB_pod on Instagram and Twitter.
Absolutely. I look forward to the finale, and I also love that you guys are coming back sooner rather than later. So good time for anybody to jump on if you have not. Again, still not streaming anywhere, but if you can get an Amazon order to yourself, maybe you pick up the cheap Blu-ray. That would be a good idea. Or I don't know. So I think that's going to do it for us here at the ARK of E podcast. I have been Noah.
I've been Alex.
And we thank you for listening. Until next time, stay safe, stay smart, and stay tuned.
I've been wearing my hoops. I've been wearing my big old silver hoops. I've been walking around the house in them, babe. I've been chilling on the couch in them. I'm accenting with socks. I'm accenting with brightly colored socks. I've been putting a show on for me, babe. I'm the only one who knows it. It's whatever we feel. It's whatever we wanna do. It's whatever we feel. Whatever we wanna do. It's whatever we feel. It's whatever we wanna do. It's whatever we feel. Whatever we wanna do. It's the thing I wanna do. It's the thing I wanna do. I'm doing it. It's just the thing I wanna do. It's the thing I wanna hit the bed. I've been closing up shop. And I've been winning when they say that I would not die. I've been standing up to all of them, babe. I've been answering a call for them. I quit playing them games. You can address me by all 3 of my names. 'Cause I'm getting official about it,